one of Wall Street's legendary investors, Jim Rogers, who's chief executive of Rogers Holdings, and says that is precisely what we should be bracing for, meaning the recession, not the job creation, although we should be so lucky to be bracing for job creation. Jim, walk us through your logic.
I am delighted to see you, Dylan, and I'm very happy to hear you saying, my goodness, what are we wasting our time on some congressman about when the world is facing disaster here and abroad? We're the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, Dylan. We've got to do something about it. Greece is bankrupt. The rating agencies are right. They will not be able to pay. Somebody better be getting prepared, even if it's just the viewers of your network, getting ready to protect themselves.
Let us talk about, A, how we got into this situation, individually and collectively, and then more importantly talk about how a rational group of adults would have a serious conversation about resolving it. I've got a little connect the dots graphic series that I prepared to sort of help people understand this, which basically begins with the creation of household consumer debt in the 90s and 2000 with the authorization of the government, the Clinton administration and everybody else, and the banks say, listen, make the credit easy, get it out there, it's good for us, it's good for them, and so we created piles of household debt, piles of institutional debt. In 2008, we watched that debt reveal itself and its instability in the banking system, total collapse, bailout, money printing, we know it. So the household was not held to account, or in some cases not to account. The banks not held to account at all. And the end game is the gigantic debt bubble that was created in the household and banking systems of the world ending up in the hands of world governments, whether it's Greece or in our case, the U.S. government. If you are lending money that you never had to people that could never borrow it, and your resolution is to make it somebody else's problem, how do you begin to solve a problem like that? And can you do it without writing down the debt, Jim?
Dylan, it's astonishing to me that grown-ups can say, and in Washington they do say, the solution to too much debt and too much consumption is more debt and more consumption. No, that's not the solution to the problem. The solution to the problem is cutting spending and writing off the debt. When people are bankrupt, they're bankrupt, Dylan. Face facts. Rewrite the debt. Start over again. It's painful. Of course it's painful. It's terribly painful. But pushing this out for another decade is going to be much, much worse painful.
And when you look at history, Jim, and the amount of debt that was on the earth in the 1930s and the decision after World War II to restructure and write down debt globally, how important was that decision after World War II from the debt created in the 1930s to write down that debt? And could we have had the prosperity we had in the last century without doing that?
That's what happened. Everybody wrote off the debts. They said we made some horrible mistakes. Now let's start over. Dylan, the same thing happened in Scandinavia in the early 90s. Everybody went bankrupt. They had a horrible time, but they wrote everything off. They started over, and Scandinavia has boomed for the past 15 or 20 years. This solution we're trying in the U.S. and in Europe is not going to work. It never has.
Why do you think they're even bothering to attempt it? The people that are involved with this are not inherently stupid. They're not inherently malicious. What are they thinking that we're not?
Who said they're not inherently stupid?
Well, I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, Jim.
Okay, fine. No, what they're trying to do is push the can down to the next election. All they want to do is get reelected and hope this problem goes away somehow. This has never worked. It's not going to work now.
It seems that the biggest barrier to having a serious conversation among grown men and women about resolving a real problem, it sucks, it's terrible, it's awful, we've been here before, we'll be here again, is to have the conversation about writing down the debt and cutting down the spending. You and I both know that the political influence of the giant banks is massive and that they have a lot to lose if we were to restructure the debt. How big of a barrier are the big banks, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, to having this write-down conversation?
It's not just the big banks here, it's the big banks in Europe too. When the banks get in trouble, they call up and say, save me, save me, save me, save me. I found it outrageous that American taxpayers who've saved their money, done nothing wrong for the past 20 years, suddenly are getting bills from Washington saying, you got to bail out some people who didn't pay their mortgages on time, who did the wrong thing. Likewise in Europe, if I were a German or a Dutch taxpayer, and all of a sudden I got a government bill from saying, you got to pay for some Greeks down on the beach drinking ouzo, I would be furious. This is bad economics. It's bad. Politicians don't care about morality, but it's horrible economics. Why should you and I and the people in America who've done things right suddenly pay for people who've done things wrong? And you know, Dylan, in America, all the people who've saved are really getting abused now because we're earning that much interest. All the retirees who thought they'd have a lot of money on retirement are getting nothing to pay off some deadbeats.
And the fact of the matter is the deadbeats in question are not just the individual borrowers who couldn't pay those loans, but are the actual giant banks who created the debt and are bonusing themselves without ever having the money in the first place.
Absolutely, absolutely. Why should you and I bail out some guys on Wall Street so they can keep their Lamborghinis? Let them lose their Lamborghinis. It's not the first time people have gone bankrupt in history. The system will survive. We may hurt for a while, but let them lose their Lamborghinis.
Yeah, listen, until we break the linkage between 40% of all political contributions coming from banks, that, I think, is really where we have to focus our attention, because it's hard to get a politician that'll do anything when they're getting 40% of their money from one group of folks. I got to get out of here, Jim. I really am grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation, incredibly grateful for the potency of your message and helping people understand the message that obviously I try to bring every day here. Thank you.